International law exists for a reason. It is the bedrock upon which global peace and cooperation are built. It provides a framework for nations to interact peacefully and respectfully, ensuring that conflicts are managed and resolved through dialogue and mutual understanding. It outlines the rules of engagement, sets boundaries, and underscores the importance of human rights. These principles are meant to protect the dignity and sovereignty of all nations. But what happens when a nation operates outside this framework? What are the implications for global order and justice? What happens when a nation consistently violates international law without consequence? The erosion of trust and the potential for chaos become real threats. This is the question that plagues the international community's relationship with Israel. The situation is complex and fraught with historical tensions. For decades, Israel has acted with impunity, committing human rights violations and defying UN resolutions with little to no repercussions. This has led to a significant debate on the effectiveness of international law. From the ongoing occupation of Palestinian territories to the repeated attacks on neighboring Lebanon, Israel's actions have drawn widespread condemnation. These actions have severe humanitarian impacts. Yet, despite the gravity of these transgressions, meaningful accountability remains elusive. The international community often finds itself at an impasse. This essay delves into the reasons behind this perplexing reality. We will explore the historical, political, and social factors that contribute to this ongoing issue. We'll examine the role of powerful alliances, particularly with the United States, in shielding Israel from international censure. These alliances have significant geopolitical implications. We'll explore the devastating consequences of this impunity both for the victims of Israeli aggression and for the very fabric of international law. The credibility of international institutions is at stake. Ultimately, this essay serves as a call to action. It urges the global community to reflect on its principles and take decisive steps. It's a plea to the international community to move beyond rhetoric and towards concrete action. The time for passive observation has passed. The time for empty condemnations is over. Real change requires commitment and courage. The time for justice and accountability is now. The world must come together to uphold the principles of international law and ensure a just and peaceful future for all. The United States, a self-proclaimed champion of democracy and human rights, plays a paradoxical role in this narrative. On one hand, it positions itself as a global watchdog, quick to call out and condemn human rights violations in various parts of the world. While quick to denounce human rights abuses elsewhere, the U.S. consistently shields Israel from meaningful consequences for its actions. This double standard is glaring and raises questions about the true motivations behind U.S. foreign policy. This unwavering support, often bordering on blind allegiance, has emboldened Israel, fostering a culture of impunity. Israel, knowing it has the backing of a superpower, continues its controversial policies without fear of significant repercussions. The U.S. provides Israel with billions of dollars in military aid annually, making it the largest recipient of U.S. foreign assistance. This aid is not just financial, it includes advanced military technology and intelligence support. This financial and military backing serves as a lifeline for Israel, enabling its continued occupation and military operations. The support effectively underwrites Israel's military endeavors, allowing it to maintain its strategic and territorial ambitions. Moreover, the U.S. frequently uses its veto power at the UN Security Council to block resolutions condemning Israeli actions, further insulating Israel from international pressure. This use of veto power is a clear signal of the U.S.'s unwavering commitment to shielding Israel. This unwavering support, irrespective of Israel's transgressions, sends a dangerous message to the world that some nations are above the law. It creates a precedent that undermines the principles of justice and accountability on the global stage. It undermines the very foundations of international law, eroding its legitimacy and effectiveness. The selective application of international norms weakens the global order and diminishes the hope for a fair and just world. Israel's disregard for international law is not a recent phenomenon. This pattern of behavior has roots that stretch back through the decades, deeply embedded in the nation's history and political strategy. It's deeply ingrained in the nation's history, a pattern of behavior that has persisted for decades. The conflict with Palestine is a stark example of this ongoing defiance. From the illegal occupation of Palestinian territories in 1967 to the annexation of East Jerusalem, Israel has consistently acted in defiance of international law. These actions have had profound and lasting impacts on the region. The construction of illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank, the demolition of Palestinian homes, and the restrictions on Palestinian movement are just a few examples of Israel's ongoing violations. These measures have severely disrupted the lives of countless Palestinians. These actions, deemed illegal under international law, have resulted in a brutal system of apartheid, segregating and discriminating against Palestinians. The daily reality for many is one of hardship and oppression. Despite repeated UN resolutions condemning these actions, Israel continues its policies unabated. The international community's calls for justice and adherence to international law have largely gone unheeded. This brazen disregard for international law, coupled with the absence of meaningful consequences, raises serious questions about the effectiveness of the international legal order. It challenges the very foundations of global justice and accountability. The international community, often quick to condemn human rights abuses in other parts of the world, has been conspicuously silent on Israel's actions. This deafening silence, often attributed to political expediency and fear of reprisal, has emboldened Israel, allowing it to act with impunity. While some nations have voiced concerns and issued condemnations, these have largely been symbolic gestures, lacking any real teeth. The international community's failure to take concrete action, such as imposing sanctions or demanding accountability, has created a climate of permissiveness, signaling to Israel that it can act without consequence. This lack of action not only emboldens Israel, but also sets a dangerous precedent for other nations. It undermines the principle of universality enshrined in international law, suggesting that some nations are above the law, free to act with impunity. Section 5. The human cost of inaction. The consequences of this impunity are far-reaching and devastating. For Palestinians living under occupation, the consequences are dire. They face daily restrictions on their movement, access to resources, and basic freedoms. The construction of illegal settlements, the demolition of homes, and the confiscation of land have created a climate of fear and uncertainty. Beyond the occupied territories, Israel's actions have destabilized the entire region. The repeated attacks on Lebanon, often targeting civilian infrastructure, have resulted in widespread displacement, death, and destruction. The 2024 war, which saw Israel bombarding Lebanese hospitals and ambulances, is a stark reminder of the human cost of this impunity. Section 6. The illusion of peace, the perils of ignoring international law. Some argue that focusing on Israel's violations of international law is counterproductive, hindering the path to peace. They suggest that dialogue and negotiation are the only way forward. However, this argument ignores a fundamental truth. There can be no lasting peace without justice. Ignoring Israel's violations only perpetuates the cycle of violence and injustice. It sends a dangerous message that might Trump's right, that powerful nations can act with impunity. This not only undermines the international legal order but also fuels resentment and instability, making lasting peace an elusive dream. True peace requires accountability, justice, and a commitment to upholding international law. It requires acknowledging and addressing the root causes of the conflict, including Israel's illegal occupation and its discriminatory policies towards Palestinians. Section 7. The urgency for justice and accountability. The call for accountability is not about punishing Israel or fueling animosity. It's about upholding the fundamental principles of international law, ensuring justice for victims, and preventing future atrocities. It's about sending a clear message that violations of international law have consequences, regardless of who the perpetrator is. The international community must move beyond rhetoric and towards concrete action. This includes imposing targeted sanctions on individuals and entities responsible for human rights abuses, suspending arms sales to Israel, and referring the situation to the International Criminal Court. Holding Israel accountable is not only a moral imperative but also a strategic necessity. It's essential for restoring faith in the international legal order, deterring future violations, and paving the way for a just and lasting peace. Section 8. Breaking the cycle of violence, a path forward. Breaking the cycle of violence and achieving a just and lasting peace requires a fundamental shift in approach. It requires moving beyond the current paradigm of impunity and towards a framework grounded in accountability, justice, and respect for international law. This includes recognizing the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, ending the illegal occupation, dismantling the settlement enterprise, and ensuring equal rights for all. It requires holding all parties accountable for their actions, regardless of their political affiliations or power dynamics. The international community has a crucial role to play in facilitating this process. It must exert meaningful pressure on Israel to comply with international law, provide support and protection to the Palestinian people, and work towards a just and sustainable solution. Section 9. Conclusion. Towards a just and equitable future. The international community faces a choice: continue down the path of inaction and complicity, or choose the path of justice and accountability. The former will only perpetuate the cycle of violence, injustice, and instability. The latter, while challenging, offers the only hope for a just and lasting peace. The time for empty condemnations and symbolic gestures is over. The time for concrete action is now. The world is watching, and history will judge us by our actions, not by our words. Let us choose wisely, for the sake of justice, peace, and a future where all people are treated with dignity and respect.